The story of Jesus. Imagine this. The year 33 AD. Jerusalem under the iron fist of Rome. In one of the prison cells sits a man. In a few hours, he will be executed. But this is no ordinary prisoner. This is someone called God. And today you will learn why from the very beginning they saw him exactly that way. Introduction. This story really happened. In times when Jerusalem was bustling with life. When on the streets you could hear Latin spoken by Roman soldiers. The Aramaic language of common people. And Hebrew of the scribes. These were the religious leaders. But also political leaders. They controlled the temple. They controlled the people. Together with the Pharisees, another group of influential leaders, they ruled the life of every Jew. And that is when he appeared. Jesus of Nazareth. WHO was Jesus. He walked the dusty roads of Galilee. He taught people. He healed the sick. But he did something more. Something that made the religious leaders pale with fear. He accepted worship due only to God. He allowed people to kneel before him. He said, "I and the Father are one." He forgave sins, something only God could do. His disciples called him Lord and God. Thomas fell before him and said, "My Lord and my God." And Jesus did not deny it. He did not say, "Do not call me God." He accepted it, because he knew who he was. Conflict with the leaders. The scribes and Pharisees noticed this. They knew what he was doing. And that is why they wanted to kill him. Listen carefully to this dialogue. "We are not stoning you for a good work, but for blasphemy. Because you, being a man, make yourself God." Those are their words. They perfectly understood who Jesus claimed to be. He was not just saying he was a teacher. He was not just saying he was a prophet. He was saying he was God. And the religious leaders knew it. That is why they considered it blasphemy. That is why they brought about his death. Because according to their law, someone who makes himself God must die. What do the oldest documents say? But maybe this was just invented later. Maybe the first Christians did not consider him God. Listen, there is a certain mosaic. Found in Jerusalem. Dated to around 230 AD. Less than 200 years after the death of Jesus. Today you can see it at the Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C. On this mosaic there is an inscription in Greek. A prayer. To whom? To God Jesus Christ. Not to God Jesus Christ when we write it with a lowercase letter. But to God Jesus Christ. This is one of the oldest archaeological proofs. It shows that already in the 3rd century, just a few generations after the apostles, Christians were praying to Jesus as God. What did the apostles say? But let us go back even further. John, the disciple who walked with Jesus. He begins his gospel like this. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Then he writes, "And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us." This is about Jesus. John calls him God. Paul, the apostle who previously persecuted Christians. He writes a letter to Titus. Looking for the blessed hope and the appearing of the glory of our great God and Savior, Jesus Christ. Great God and Savior, Jesus Christ. The letter to the Hebrews says about Jesus. But of the Son he says, "Your throne, O God, is forever and ever." The author calls Jesus, God. These are not later additions. These are the oldest Christian documents. The manipulation. But what happened? Why do some religious organizations today teach differently? Why do they say that Jesus is only the first created being? Listen. In 1961, a certain publishing house published its own translation of the Bible. In the Gospel of John, it changed key words. Instead of "the Word was God," it wrote "the Word was a God." Lowercase g. No Greek manuscript confirms this. Most biblical scholars, even those not associated with traditional Christianity, say this is a mistake. But the organization did it. Why? Because their doctrine required changing the text. The text did not shape the doctrine. But the doctrine changed the text. This is manipulation. The trial. Let us return to that cell. To Jerusalem. Jesus stands before Pilate, the Roman governor. Pilate asks, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus answers, "My kingdom is not of this world." Pilate sees that Jesus is innocent. But the religious leaders shout. Crowds gather. "Crucify him! Crucify him!" And then they say something crucial. "We have a law, and according to that law he ought to die because he made himself the Son of God." They knew. Jesus was not killed for being a good teacher. He was killed for claiming to be God. The crucifixion and something more. They lead him to Golgotha. They nail him to the cross. He dies, laid in a tomb, but this is not the end. On the third day the tomb is empty. The disciples see him alive. Thomas, the one who doubted, falls before him, and says these words, "My Lord and my God." Jesus does not say, "Do not blaspheme." He does not say, "Do not call me God." He accepts this confession, because it is the truth. Conclusion. From the very beginning, from the first days of Christianity, the disciples knew. The apostles wrote. Believers confessed. Mosaics testified. Jesus Christ is God who became man. Not an angel, not a creature, not a lesser God, but true God, the same one who created the world. And if someone changes this image, if someone manipulates the texts, if someone says the first Christians thought differently, then ask yourself this question. Why? Why did the scribes and Pharisees want to kill him? Because he claimed to be God. Why did the apostles give their lives for him? Because they knew he was God. Why does the 3rd century Mosaic call him God? Because that is what he was from the beginning. History speaks clearly. The documents speak clearly. Archaeology speaks clearly. Now you decide who you believe. History, or those who change it. If you enjoyed this presentation, please like this video, write a comment, subscribe for more content, and turn on notifications by clicking the bell icon. Check out the programs on the channel. Talk to you soon.